Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm from the East Coast, so good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at. But welcome to acu-connect. We're doing gonna have a great session today. We're doing transactions to transformations. Oh, excuse my pop up there.
You're in
Reminding
the
me
right
not,
spot, Jennifer. You're in the right spot.
yeah, reminding me to not
calendar.
miss the webinar. Love it. So we're doing transactions to transformations, redefining implementations in the age of aspiration. That's a mouthful, but this is going to be presented by Ed Kless and Ron Baker of Threshold. Ed has done some fantastic sessions for us in the past, so we are really excited to see what he's got to share with us today. But before we get into it too quickly, help me. We have to cover a little bit of the paperwork. We're going to briefly touch on our mission at acu-connect. We are trying to provide Acumatica community members with a network for Acumatica cloud ERP education, resources, and collaboration. It's a wonderful, vibrant community, fantastic ecosystem. I encourage everybody to sign up if you're not already a member. We do have to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. Our charter sponsors up on the screen, that without them, none of this would be able to be possible. Our community sponsors, our premium sponsors, again, without them, again, none of this would be possible. But we do have some save the dates that I wanted to share before we got too far. We've got edition days for distribution coming up next week, next Thursday. We have our Connection Hour virtual networking session coming up. Edition days for manufacturing, and both of those are in June. And then our acu-connect has been scheduled. Very excited about that. That is September 18th and 19th. Cannot wait to see what those sessions are going to bring. So please feel free to check us out at the acu-connect.com/events. And the QR code at the top is functional and ready to go. So without further ado, Ed, if you would like to go ahead and take over.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer, so much. Appreciate it. Let me see if I can get my slides. Do you have to shut down your sharing of slides, or can I just override that?
You should
I can just override. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let me jump in here. A little finagling, but I think I got it. All right. I believe we should be good to go. All right. Well, fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And in talking about acu-connect for a second, we would love some feedback from this group specifically. If any of the topics that we're going to talk about today is of interest to you and you'd like us to maybe to do something similar or perhaps even a deeper dive at acu-connect, let us know. I believe the applications for speakers is due May 30th, if I'm not mistaken. So Ron and I would love to present on that conference as well. Let me quick introduce myself. I'm Ed Kless. I worked for Sage for about 20 years, and my job at Sage was to help make our business partners better, which was a great gig for as long as it did last. I sometimes refer to it as I was orbiting the giant hairball. I tried to stay away from getting stuck into the hairball that was a corporate America job, but not so far out that I get blasted out into the universe. So I had to kind of revolve around it, and I think I did it fairly successfully for a while. But I loved the job there, and want to continue to do that. I'm going to introduce you to my co-founder of Threshold, Ron Baker. He and I also do a radio show. It's so old, folks. It's so old. It was referred to as internet radio. It's now really just a podcast, but it's still stuck in our brain that it's a radio show called The Soul of Enterprise. Welcome, Ron. Give a quick background for this group. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with you, so give us 30
Thanks,
30
Ed.
seconds. Yeah.
And hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here and present these ideas to you. I'm Ron Baker. I'm a recovering CPA. I started my life in a Big 8 accounting firm, so you can carbon date me from that era. But after I started my own firm, I got really interested in business model transformations in professional firms, wrote some books about getting rid of the billable hour, adopting value pricing, coming up with alternative KPIs. And I met Ed in 2003. We've been working together ever since, and we're really excited about this new entity threshold because we do believe we are on the threshold of a new economic era, and that's kind of what we're going to show you today.
Yeah. Ron, before we get to the economic era piece, let's talk business models, because I think that's going to be our starting point for today. And I just this is one of my just can I advance the slides? There we go. One of my all-time favorite quotes from Andy Grove, not exactly a slouch with regard to technology and how that is concerned, as he was one of the co-founders of Intel. But he said that disruptive threats come inherently not from new technology, which is, I think, a bit shocking considering his background, but from new business models. And when you think about it, he was the one that really it created the business model around selling the chips to the manufacturers of the PCs, and that was wholly different. In the past, it was always done by the same folks. They would put the chips together and create a computer around it. And he's like, no, we're going to specialize in this. Great example of specialization and how specialization continues to work its magic in the economy itself. But and when you really think about it, I think this is so true, because what kills you does not look like you. What kills you does not look like you. The organizations that come and usurp and take over from the old inherent ones do not look like the ones of the past. You know, the classic example, of course, is the car companies did not look anything like the buggy whip manufacturers, and they came in with an entire new technology. So while it was technology, it was actually the business model that also changed, because what the car companies began to do is set up these dealerships where you would go and you would buy a car completely assembled, because believe it or not, for a time being, when you ordered your buggy whip, it showed up to you in a box and you had to put the thing together yourself, right? So and in fact, initially car companies did the same thing, and it wasn't until some of the business models that changed with Henry Ford and the production line, where they came pre-assembled, because they were working through dealerships. But Ron, I know you have a lot to say about this concept as well, so give us a little bit on business models and why it's so important.
One of the things I loved that Andy said was in his book, I think the Only the Paranoid Survive, is that we've got to disrupt ourselves, because otherwise we're going to be disrupted from the outside. And he said, listen, if you're going to be if you're going to be cannibalized, it's better to dine with friends. In other words, let's disrupt ourselves before we get disrupted from an outsider. At least that way we'll control our destiny better. Um, and I think he's been proven right with this concept. Business models are important, but it's interesting, Ed, because what we're talking about today is actually bigger than just a business model. And so I'm kind of interested in that too. But it also means that our traditional business model is going to have to change because of what we're going to be talking about.
Right. And I think how that begins to manifest itself in what we believe to be the one of the ways that the transformation economy will, again, this is an economic model that's being changed, and we will get to that, I promise. But it also involves the potential change to the business model that we believe professional organizations, by the way, not just people who do software implementation, not just people who sell software to customers, and those of you in the ISV community are probably more aligned with this notion of subscription model, and perhaps have moved at least in some direction to that case, rather than a one and done type model, or even a support and maintenance type model, because it really does completely change that. But Ron, we came up with a definition of a subscription model, because when we first started looking at this, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, when we first came across the work of Teen So, in his book Subscribed, by the way, which is fantastic, and you should definitely check that out if you haven't. But there was no definition of what the model was. There was no definition. So take us through this definition, because there's lots of words in here, but they're all important. This is as succinct as we can possibly make it.
Yeah, it's a suitcase definition. Every word needs to be unpacked. But the subscription model, and I know SaaS was, developed by who, Ed? Wasn't it Salesforce that kind of came up
One of
with
the
the
first
SaaS
ones to
model?
go into it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what I love about the subscription model for what we're going to be talking about is it's relational. It's not transactional. It doesn't just look at the math of the moment. It doesn't look at profit per job, per customer, per transaction, or per hour. It's a relational thing where you're trying to build customer lifetime value over the long term. So your focus, your KPIs, your dashboard all change because of this model. And subscription model is essentially, we believe, periodic recurring payments for frictionless, ever increasing value and serial transformations. Now, frictionless means basically the customer experience. Think Amazon one click, shows up on your porch the same day a lot of times, or the next day probably at
It's
most.
now showing up before I even need it, Ron. Like,
I,
like
I,
all things are now showing up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I meant to order that. I mean, it's just
It is. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so that's what we mean by frictionless. It surfaces simplicity. It takes away the bureaucracy from the customer. It saves the customer time. It just makes everything frictionless. By the way, including your pricing, because in a subscription model, the customer only has to confront the pricing value decision once. Once they subscribe, then chances are, if you keep them delighted for a year, you have a 95% chance of keeping them for life. And that's significant. And that's why we think the subscription model, focusing on the long term relationship rather than the math of the moment transaction. And then by ever increasing value, Ed and I borrowed a concept from Walt Disney. He used to call it plussing. He wanted to constantly plus the parks. He did the same thing with his movies, but certainly when he created Disneyland, because it was a living, growing thing that was never going to be finished like a film, he said we have to constantly plus the park, constantly delight our customers, our guests, so they return. And so he understood the lifetime value of a customer through the idea of plussing the experience. And that's kind of what we're suggesting to firms as well. And then, of course, serial transformations is what we're going to explain is the new economic offering, the new economy that we're moving in that is being labeled the transformation economy.
And one of the things that we think is important to note on this, Ron, because we get one of the questions that we get all the time is, well, how do I know if I'm on a subscription model or not? Because we do see some of the elements of these things. We do see things like a periodic payment. So it's like, but is it just an annual price that's divided by 12? That's not necessarily a subscription because it doesn't fall into, I think, the ever increasing value and certainly doesn't match the transformation test. But I think the easiest way to know is if you're really doing a subscription is, does your customer, or we like to even call them member, know that they're on a subscription? Do they even know
Right.
that? Because we've seen a lot of organizations that have put the periodic payment portion into place, but they're really not on subscription because the customer doesn't even know it that they're on subscription.
Right. If you're just taking a price and dividing it by 12, that's not the subscription business model. That's just a payment term. The customer has to know that they subscribe, just like we know what we subscribe to, whether it's software or Hulu or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime, whatever. We know our subscriptions, and we think that subscribing to a business changes the psychology of the relationship, especially with the customer. I feel more attached to companies I'm subscribed to, even though I've never dealt with anybody at Amazon face to face. I feel like I have a connection with them because I subscribe to them. And so it's really important that the customer understands they subscribe and that they can cancel at any time. And this is part of frictionless as well. And also, we think it's a value guarantee. If they can cancel any time, then if they cancel, it's a signal that they're no longer getting value. And since nobody owns a customer anyway, we think making it very easy to cancel, putting it in every touch point, big cancel button, um, counterintuitively, the customer is less likely to cancel if they know they can at any time. The subscription model is not the old Columbia House records or CDs or 8-track cassettes that you could never. I think they're still hitting my credit card, Ed, but that's not what we're talking about. You can get out of a subscription very easily. And the other acid test for if you're truly on a subscription is what are your KPIs? Because a subscription business has very definite, empirically tested KPIs. And by the way, they have nothing to do with profit per job, profit per hour, billable hours, realization, any of that, those all go out the window because when your business model changes, your KPIs change.
The other part of frictionless, Ron, that I think is important to note, yes, it's cancelable in 30 days, but it's also, and I think this is important to note, easy on too. And to be easy on, which is just to get started, let's get going in this business, you have to be easy off. I think those two are interlinked together. So it can't be let's lock people down into a 3-year contract and get them up front because we have to make sure that we make it up. No, you got to make sure that what you do is take on customers that you know you're going to delight in the future. So, Ron, you talked about KPIs. Well, of course, always the ultimate KPI is profit, right? I mean, or that we have to look at. Are we making a profit so that we can pay for tomorrow, right? So, profit is the result, not the cause of our business, but it's the result. And if we're not making a profit, what are we doing here? But talk about this as the recovering accountant. Explain to our group here, most of whom probably have a familiarity with financial statements, even those in the ISV community. So I don't think you have to spend too much time, but give an overview of this and some insights as regard to why even changing the P&L is so important.
Yeah, I apologize for this, folks, but this is the accountant in me. I forced Ed to put this in there. But we all know the traditional income statement on the left-hand side. That's what we've been operating under since GAAP was invented, 500 plus years ago. But the subscription P&L is completely different because it's forward-looking. It starts with your annual recurring revenue balance. It backs out the churn, the customers and the revenue that you lost, and then it adds in new customers gained in the period, whether that's a month or annual or quarterly. And then it ends, the bottom line here is actually ending ARR. So it's a forward looking income statement. It's not just backwards looking. It also forces us to put expenses into various categories. And we do this so we can compute very specific KPIs like customer acquisition cost and other types of KPIs that subscription businesses use that are much more meaningful and much more predictive than the normal financial KPIs that you get. So, as you can see, under a subscription model, even your accounting financial statements look different as well as your KPIs.
I think one of the most insightful things, and this is a direct lift, by the way, from Teen So's book. I think it's about 3/4 of the way through the book where he shows this income statement that his CFO at Zora, that's the company that Team So is the CEO of, uh, put before him because it was the CFO of Zora that came up with this idea to make this change. And what is so interesting about it, and even as a non-accountant, even as somebody who only took two courses in college, but the insight of that this makes all of our costs, cost of goods sold, revenue, all of research and development, sales and marketing, all of the costs are, according to the statement, are future directed. We are not trying to align revenue and cost to get some kind of a P&L for a period. This is not periodic at all, with the exception of it's how many customers did we lose and how much in customer revenue did we gain. That's the only thing that's periodic about this. Right? Everything
Right?
else is forward looking.
Yeah, it does away with the matching principle. The other thing that's really interesting is the net operating income that shows 10 here, but that could even be zero because the point is even if you plowed back all your operating profit back into customer acquisition, as long as the bucket's not leaking with churn, then you're going to end up growing customer lifetime value. Now, customer lifetime value has to still be modeled, but you model it off this P&L. And that's really what you're trying to grow as a subscription business. It's not just about EBITDA or profit, it's about customer lifetime value. And I think it makes it more predictive as well.
And this is one of the reasons why, for years and years and years, people were like, well, how is Netflix make it? How is it why are they worth so much money? Because they don't have, they don't, not turning a profit. Well, this is the answer right here,
Yeah,
because they were looking at their PLs completely differently. Ron, talk a little bit about this concept called the revenue model, because I think it's different from the business model, isn't it?
it is. The revenue model asks a very simple question, which is what are you asking your customers to pay for? The pricing question is how much are you asking your customers to pay you? And of course, you can have 3 tiers and different types of pricing strategies. But the revenue model goes even deeper. What are we asking our customers to pay for? And one of our favorite examples is Fender. I believe Fender is one of the world's largest manufacturers of guitars. And I think the CEO was interviewed in 2015. It was pre-COVID. And he was asked, what's difficult about selling guitars? And he said, well, people buy guitars. They're usually very excited. They probably have lessons lined up, found a teacher. And he said, 95% of them will quit within 6 months. The guitar will go under the bed or in the closet. And he said, worse yet, it will be regifted to their cousin or a sibling, and I'll lose another sale. So, Ed, if you put up the stats on this, it's really interesting. The CEO created Fender Play, and he launched it in July of 2017. And by 2020, when COVID struck, Fender Play, which is a digital library of how to play a guitar at the level that you aspire to. So they have beginner, intermediate, advanced, probably even rock star, whatever. And it's thousands of digital videos that you can watch at your own pace and leisure and learn to play the guitar. And he had by 2020 about 200,000 subscribers that were paying, I think it was around $199 a month. And when COVID struck and we were all shut in our homes learning how to bake bread and languages and knitting and all the other things that we're trying to do, he made Fender Play available for a trial period. I think it was 3 months, Ed. It might have been a month. I can't remember. But it shut down his servers. He had literally 1 million people sign up to Fender Play. And as of 2024, he has 930,000 subscribers at it's $149 a year. I'm sorry, not $199. He's got a 5% churn rate, so they lose about 5% of the customers every year. And Fender, between 2020 and 2024, year on year, sold more guitars than any other year in its corporate history. And it's been around quite a while, I think. And the subscribers, because it is a hybrid subscription model, he's still selling the guitar. But if you're a subscriber to Fender Play, just like Amazon Prime, the subscribers spend more with the company. In this case, 40% more. I think Amazon, Ed, they spend 8 times more if you're a Prime member than
Mhm.
just a regular Amazon customer that just comes in periodically and buys. So Fender Play really, really it was a great example of a model that focused on the right revenue model question, because when the CEO was re-interviewed after all of this and was asked, "What did you learn what did you learn from Fender Play?" He said, "Fender is not selling guitars. We're selling musicianship." And that's what the revenue model question forces you to think about. What are you really selling? It's not drills and drill bits. It's a hole so the customer can hang a picture. In this case, it's a transformation to be able to play the guitar at the level that you aspire to, hence the term at the word aspiration in our title. It's all about the customer's aspiration. If they just want to play at a beginner level to impress friends at the family Christmas party, or if they want to be in a band, they can learn to the level that they aspire to. But the point is that Fender's not selling guitars, they're selling musicianship. The guitar is a means to an end. The product is a means to the end of the musicianship, just like services are a means to an end to something else.
And this has an absolute direct parallel in the ERP world. Ron and I have worked with a partner organization. In fact, we interviewed them on the Soul of Enterprise. You can go back, and the guy's name is Kurt Bangert, and his son Reed. They were both on, and they have moved over to a full subscription model for their implementations, which is, I think, practically modeled on the Fender Play example, because the basis for their subscription is over 2,000 videos that are how to in nature, that are sometimes conceptual in nature. So there's videos on just creating your segmentation for your chart of accounts, that kind of thing. So concepts of like, why would you want to create a vendor number in such a way? I mean, and so so they're conceptual as well as specific how-tos, just like the Fender Play model. For those of you who have tried to play guitar or played guitar, know that there's the workaround on the infamous F chord. One of the problems with learning guitar is that you're taught that one of the basic chords that you need to play is an F chord, which it can barely get your hand around the guitar the right way, and you have to build up strength in order to be able to play it right. But there is a workaround, which is to put a capo around the third fret and play a D chord instead, which is much easier. Well, those are the kinds of things that Bangert and his organization have. What are those equivalents in the ERP space? And quite frankly, he's doing magnificently with it as well. We'll talk more about examples in just a little bit. But Ron, anything before we move on to progression of economic value that you wanted to mention around this?
No, just that the revenue model question is critically important. No matter what your business model is or how you price or what you're offering, please, please, please constantly revisit your revenue model, because chances are what we think the customer is buying from us is really not what they're buying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is where it gets back to some of our old time work. It's certainly not hours. No customer ever wants to buy an hour.
Nope.
They don't want an hour. They want the results of the hour, but they don't want the hour. So you're not selling what your customers are buying if you're selling them hours. That is not what they're buying at all.
Yep.
All right, Ron, I got to just tell you that we're 26 minutes in, so you're not allowed to take 40 minutes talking about this slide, okay?
I won't.
All right.
But this is the progression of economic value that was first laid out in a book by Joe Pine and James Gilmore that was published in 1999. You're probably thinking, why are you talking about a book from 26 years ago? Because this progression was laid out in that book, just as you're looking at it here. They didn't change a word. And what this shows is how we've moved through various economic eras, which is fascinating because we started as hunter gatherers, but if you go beyond that, then we went into the commodity economy, which was basically agricultural and extracting things like timber and then eventually oil as well from the ground. We were extracting commodities. And then, of course, when we went into the Industrial Revolution, we started to produce products that were tangible at scale, at massive scale, actually, and that was the Industrial Revolution. Then in the 1920s, we moved into the service economy. Economists started to notice in the 20s that a lot of people didn't work in factories, didn't make tangible things. They provided services. They worked in insurance companies or banks, or they were waiters and waitresses in restaurants, things like that. So the service economy started to grow. And then we moved into, in the 1990s, and hence the title of Pine and Gilmore's book, The Experience Economy, we started to notice that a large proportion of consumer spending was for experiences, going to Disney World with your family, taking great escape vacations and movies and amusement parks, and more and more of our consumer budget started to go to experiences. What's interesting when you look at this progression, folks, is as you move up, what you're seeing is you're seeing more pricing power. So how do you decommoditize a commodity? Well, maybe you put a couple commodities together and you make bread, or you make milk, and different types of milk like you see in our milk aisles today. That gives you a bit more pricing power as you move up this progression, and it subsumes the prior offering. Each one of these is an economic offering, because economic eras are defined by what is made, what the output is. And the output of the goods economy was tangible goods. Well, then what happens when your good becomes a commodity? Well, if you can wrap a service around it, now you have the ability to get more pricing power. So think about Subway or a deli that makes a sandwich for you on demand in perfect time, when you need it, when you want it. They are taking the commodities, the bread and the goods and the deli meat and all of that, and they're putting it together for you. And because they're doing that, it's more convenient, saves you time, they can get a higher price. Same with now experience economy. There's services and goods offered in the experience economy, but they're subsumed under the umbrella of the entire experience. So when you're in the experience economy, the customers are paying you for the time that they spend with you. They're not paying for your time in terms of billable hours. They're paying for time to spend at, like, say, Disney World. They'll buy a 5-day pass for the family, and that's the experience economy. And they'll get something that's memorable, and it'll probably create happiness and memories for decades going forward. But now we are moving out of the experience economy and into the transformation economy, where when you guide a transformation for a customer, you're changing them from where they are to where they want to be. Just like Fender is taking an amateur and turning them into somebody who can play the guitar at the level that they aspire to. And when you do that, when you guide that transformation, the customer's the product. So we're actually changing the customer, and all the prior levels, because they still exist. Experiences are part of the transformation. Goods and products may be as well part of the transformation, as would services, but they're a means to the end. They're not what you're selling. What you're ultimately selling is that transformation, is that musicianship. And Ed and I believe that professional firms and consulting firms, knowledge workers, are very well poised to be in the transformation economy, because it requires judgment and wisdom and experience, and it takes the focus off of the services and the scope of work and all the things that we focus on in the old business model, and changes it to, no, we're making an impact on the customer, because we're bringing them into some desired future state that they aspire to. And by the way, we can do it over and over and over. It's not just a one and done thing. There's always something to work on in the business. So that's my brief intro, as
Very
brief
good,
as I
Ron.
could.
Very, very good. You kept it quick. I appreciate it. And just to reiterate that Ron was talking about, and I put them up a little bit late, but in the services, it's about the time you are saving the customer. One of the arguments that Ron and I have always made is you shouldn't be doing a timesheet. Your customer should be doing a timesheet, because the value is the time you're saving them. Right? So it should be a reduction in the time that they're doing. And then time well spent, of course, is them spending time with you, wanting to engage with you. So not you going off and doing data conversions and stuff like that, but them wanting to have the interface with you and have access to your knowledge. And then time invested is when they say, okay, yes, I've spent time with Ed, and now what I want to do is I'm going to go off and what I learned from Ed, I'm going to still invest my time further into the concepts that he taught me. Now, this is very theoretical. I get it. I already hear the objections to this, right? Which is, this is very theoretical. Well, we anticipated that. What we want to try to do is talk to you a little bit about some specific examples of how this would apply in the ERP space. Now, one of the things that Joe Pine talks about is that there are different transformation types. Not every transformation is a major thing. They can be smaller in both the scale of change and the quality of the change. So he breaks them up into these 4 areas: refinement, ambition, cultivation, and then metamorphosis. So I'll give an example, and then we'll apply it to then ERP. In the small scale, but a change in degree, we would go take someone who's gone from being just a wine drinker, someone who drinks wine, and say, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more about wine. I want to become an enthusiast. I want to, be able to look at a menu, a wine menu, and not have to call the sommelier over. I want to be able to pick something out that is appropriate for a dinner selection, right? So that would be a change in refinement. Well, in the ERP space, it would be say someone who knows how to do export of reports. They can dump it out to a PDF file or an Excel file or something like that, and say they're going to be refined to say, you know what, they can learn from you perhaps how to use the report writing system to make an adjustment, so they don't have to dump it into Excel all the time and make some adjustments in Excel. This is one of the things that I've always observed after my 20, well, actually close to 30 years in the industry, is that you can tell that an old ERP system is dying by the number of spreadsheets the customer has to produce, because the more spreadsheets they have to produce, the the less important the ERP system is itself, because you're not getting the reality. So this would be a refinement change where we're elevating that individual person. And by the way, transformations can happen at multiple levels. Yes, they happen at the individual level, and that's what we have talked about primarily here, but they also happen at the organizational level as well. So so we've got little mix. So let's talk about ambition, and this is I love the personal example here, because Joe Pine himself was the one who went through this. He wanted to go from being a double-digit handicap to a single-digit handicap, and when he went to his golf pro and told him this, the golf pro was like, well, I'm 150 an hour or 150 a half hour for less. And he says, no, you don't understand. I don't want to pay you until I become a single-digit handicap. And the golf pro is now like, now I'm looking at Joe Pine swing, wondering, does he have the capability of making that transformation? Right. So it completely flips things, because if I'm only going to get paid, 10 grand, let's say, when I achieve this outcome. And of course, it also changed the nature of their relationship. So rather than just giving them a lesson at the what do you call it? The
Scheduled
driving
time.
range, at the driving range, he's actually going out and playing the course with him and seeing how he's playing, doing course management, because it's not just about how you hit the ball, but your shot selection and what you're doing. So that would be a change in ambition. So a large scale change, but still a change just in degree. Here's where you take the AP user who wants to be the internal champion. Right. So that right now they process AP stuff and maybe but they really want to be the internal champion for maybe not only just accounts payable, but the entirety of the system. So that would be a change in ambition, and you're helping them with that progress, helping them move through that inside their organization. Next up would be cultivation. A switch from omnivore to vegan for whatever reason. You decide for health reasons, you no longer want to eat meat, what have you. So that's a change in kind, right? You're actually changing your kind. In this case, this is going from an organizational that runs themselves on spreadsheet finance to roles-based dashboards. I know that this is something that's near and dear to all your hearts, but what I think we're trying to point out here is there's very real examples inside ERP systems of these transformation types. And then lastly, and this is probably the biggest one that you all get involved in, which is a metamorphosis type change. Going from single to married is a metamorphosis type change. You can describe to all of your single friends what it's like to be married, but until you're married, you really don't know. Right? Same thing from not having children to having children. It cannot be fully explained through language. You have to experience it yourself. And the example that we'll give here is moving from on-premises solutions to a cloud-based solution. You can talk all about it. You can talk about the security. You can talk about all of the features and functions and what you'll be able to do. But until that organization goes through that metamorphical change of moving away from the on-premises stuff to the cloud-based stuff, they really don't know until they get there. And I can remember having this experience with so many customers who said to me, even after implementing ERP, I didn't realize what I was getting until we got it. Like that wasn't even part of the conversation. But these are the things that we got. I didn't realize I was going to be able to get breakdowns of customers by market segment. Didn't even think about that as even asking for that up front. And yet these are the things that you're able to do with me. And so we're having this better information. So Ron, I went through that very quickly. I don't know if you have anything to add to that from these transformational type things.
No, I love those examples, Ed, because they're very specific, and we try and get really specific examples depending on the profession that we're talking to. But the other thing that's really interesting about transformations is, as the guide, and that's all we are, is the professionals. We're the guide. We guide the transformation. The customer has to want to change, and if you can guide that transformation, you can take them to that new place. You also have to make sure that that transformation is sustained through time. And some of the ways we've seen that come about is you create a community, like a user community. They can share ideas, best
Like
practices,
acu-connect.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you can sustain these transformations. Because one of the things about this, Ed, that we're learning is, let's face it, we know this is hard. Guiding a transformation is hard. There's nothing easy about it. We're not offering you, simple solutions here. This is hard work, but it's precisely because it's hard that so few do it. And if when you go the extra mile, there's usually no traffic, because this is the extra mile. You're actually focusing on what the customer wants to become. And those aspirations, another interesting thing is they're universal. We all have some desire. Every one of us has a desire, and every business too, to be healthier, wealthier, wiser, or have purpose and meaning. And those aspirations already exist. We don't have to go out and market and gin up demand. We have to uncover and discover those aspirations, and we do that through conversations and relationships, which is why Ed and I believe that the subscription model lends itself much better to uncovering those aspirations, because it's not focused on the math of the moment, it's focused on customer lifetime value.
Mhm. And this notion of human flourishing. Ron, I'm just going to pause here before I have you talk a little bit more about this slide here, because you just did reference it before I even went to it, so which is great. But if people do have questions or comments, please use the question or chat panel. I haven't seen anything come through. I am monitoring them, even if it's just to say to us, "Hey, this is good. This is interesting. Keep going." We'd love to get your feedback, so you don't have to necessarily ask a question. Just drop it into the chat to make sure that we're going in the right direction here. Ron, I don't know if we need to go too much deeper in this, but talk about this concept here of these spheres of transformation, because
Yeah,
you
and
just mentioned it. So
yeah, and we really like this because, and again, this is from Joe Pine. He is actually working on a book as we speak called The Transformation Economy. It will be out in February 2026. We're sure it's going to be a worldwide bestseller, just like the experience economy was. And he put this together and he said, people have universal desires of health and well-being, purpose and meaning, wisdom and understanding, and wealth and prosperity. And when I first saw this ad, I said, well, why is he using two words? Why didn't he just follow Ben Franklin, healthier, wealthier, wiser? And he said, well, because I use two words because the first one is the means, the second one is the ends that you're going for. And so let's just take wealth and well being. Now, a lot of financial advisors, tax advisors will focus on saving you wealth or generating wealth for you. And that's great. But wealth for what? What's the purpose of that wealth? Do you want to take care of your, you know, posterity? Do you want to do a philanthropic foundation? Do you want to take care of your heirs? Do you want to build a dream home? Do you want to retire sooner? All of these are transformations, but the wealth is just a means to those ends. And so each one of these has the means and the end. So the purpose, we want to have purpose in our life because we need meaning as human beings. We need to feel like we matter, like we're needed, you know. Same with wisdom and understanding. Sure, I want knowledge, but I also want wisdom so I can understand how the world works better. And then same with health and well-being. Yes, we all want to be healthy, but why? Well, because we want to flourish. We want well-being. We want quality of life, not just necessarily quantity of life. And all of these spheres come together. And the reason for business, we believe, is human flourishing.
yeah, that's ultimately where all of this leads back. Um, all right, we painted a nice picture. I'm gonna hedge our bets a little bit, Ron. I'm gonna hedge our bets on some things, because we might have people. Oh, okay, I'm not quite fully already there. So I first want to talk a little bit about this company, Hassle Free Home Services, which is a franchise. So if the whole ERP thing doesn't work out for you, maybe you want to start a Hassle Free Home Services business. You can look them up and see. But what Hassle Free does is they do all of the routine maintenance around your home for a fixed price. They pay X per month, and they come through, with a checklist once a month, and then they do things on a rotational basis. So such things as checking and replacing light bulbs, the batteries and smoke detectors. They check your door hinges to make sure they're not leaking. They look for repairs. They inspect your HVAC. They drain a half a gallon from your hot water heater. Did you know you're supposed to do this?
No,
I didn't even know I was
no,
supposed to do this. Like I was like, it's like,
no.
okay. And how often? Apparently, it's every 6 months you're supposed to do this. I'm like, okay. But they inspect the caulking around your sinks, your showers. They change the faucet aerators. They repair the little flappy thing on your toilet when it goes bad, right? So they sharpen your garbage disposal. Another thing, never done that. Never gonna do it. Just saying, never gonna do that either. But so all this to say that these are some things that I'm sure many of you, if you can think of what the ERP equivalent is, you've done these things over and over and over again. But what I think is most interesting about Hassle-Free is that they also will, if you are a subscriber, serve as a general contractor for you if you want to do something like build a deck or put in a pool. So, but you have to be a subscriber in order to be able to have access to them managing that contract. Now, the management of the general contract is included as part of your membership, but obviously they are then going to contract and pay, and you're going to have to pay for the pool, right? So your pool is not included, right? But the notion of them handling all of the details for you is. And I think this is a really interesting potential model for organizations that can say, all right, yes, we will handle all of this stuff for you, but they may have to pay over and above what they're paying you on a subscription basis for things like bringing in an additional ISV or something, but we will handle it. That is all included in the subscription that we as the partner are offering you. And this is where I think ISVs and the ERP partners can begin to work together on forging these relationships that are similar to what Hassle-Free has with its subcontractors who then come and do the work. I think that is a very almost direct one-for-one model on this. So, Ron, any thoughts about Hassle-Free other than, how can I start one?
But yeah, how could I hire one? It's a
Mm-hmm.
franchise. It's not in every part of the country, but I am noticing very similar copycats
Yes.
around the country. And Ed, I love their tagline: "We give you back your weekend." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is just awesome. And then the other interesting thing is, on average, the franchisees get about 50% of their revenue from
This
those
sound familiar,
projects.
by the way? Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, just good.
Yep. So this is a very, very interesting hybrid model. But like Ed said, just like Costco, you have to be a subscriber to get those additional privileges of them, acting as a general contractor.
But this leads into a conversation about something we get, which is how do we handle some of these one-off engagements? So if they're not under a subscription with us, like Hassle-Free, first of all, our first answer is be like Hassle-Free and only do one-off stuff for people who are subscribers of yours. That's our first answer. But say they do need some one-off. So give us some one-off pricing strategies. And you know what, Ron? I'm just going to paint this whole slide just so that it's
Sure.
easier for us to make ourselves through it. So go ahead.
Yeah, the upfront price obviously is probably the simplest thing to do. Just if they need an installation or some type of conversion, just give them a one and done upfront price and then move down the road to a subscription. Um, some people have asked us, well, what about a longer term commitment? What if we have them sign a 5-year subscription? No, don't do that, because remember, you want to give them the opportunity to cancel at any time. No, none of us like to be locked in to a contract. My cell phone provider, I don't want to be locked into a 3-year contract. So don't do that, because we think that violates one of the rules of subscription. The other thing is you can increase the starting price, but then have it decline over time. And that's what some of these franchisees do. They will build in that pool or the kitchen remodel, and they'll tack it on to the monthly subscription, but it'll decline over time, say a year or two. And that way the customer feels like it's declining. They're making progress paying it off. And I think that's a really innovative thing. The other one is you do an enterprise plan where you give them a customized subscription plan that fits exactly what they need, which is fine when you're dealing with an outlier. One of our issues with that, though, is if every customer is an outlier, well, then maybe there's a chance that you could bake in some of those outlying notions and make them more standard and put a process around it. And the other thing you could do, and Ed, I know you're going to talk about this because you have some examples, is you could just trust your value. Go ahead and do the project and just hang on with the customer for life, and it'll probably more than pay for itself.
Yeah, I think, and what we're seeing examples of all of these in some of the ERP related partners that are doing this. They are using this, both the increased start price and then decrease over time one. Again, Ron and I prefer you to build in a price up front and just have that last, and then certainly increase that price over time, because we do think that there has to be adjustments upward for those adjustments over time. But keep in mind that what you're going to be doing is also plussing your offering. That's where it ties back to this notion of ever increasing value. So it's not just the value you're doing this year, it's the value that you're going to be continuing to provide in the future. And as you add additional services to your offering, those will increase the value. One of the great letters, Ron, and I know it's in your book called Time's Up, the letter that was sent out by Amazon when they had a price increase for the Amazon on Prime. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it was one of the best business letters ever written, best emails ever.
I do too, because they didn't tell me that their costs have gone up because of COVID and supply chain. They didn't blame it on inflation.
Inflation.
They didn't blame it on their costs of hiring people and all of that. They said, here's the value that we've added since the last time, basically, that they increased the Prime membership. And they had a bunch of bullet points. I think there was 10 or 12 of them. We've increased same day delivery in 90 cities. We've added things to Prime Video. We've added things to the Kindle benefits, to Amazon Music. There was a whole list. Now, folks, most of them, quite honestly, I don't use. But for some reason, it threw a halo over the entire membership. And it was just a no brainer for me to read that and go, oh, well, I might be able to use those benefits, or might want to use those benefits in the future. Of course, I'm going to renew my membership. It just made it a no brainer, because they didn't focus on the cost. They focused on the value that they've added. And that's exactly what we mean by plussing. You're constantly plussing your offering.
Yeah, really important stuff here. And like I said, we've seen examples of all of these. The only one we really don't like at all is that longer term commitment stuff. I mean, yes, you can do it, but we really highly recommend that you shy away from that.
And
Um,
Ed, you have an
yeah.
example, just real quick, of a company that does ERP and will even come right out of the gate with a big switchover.
Yes. I mean, their focus is they said we got rid of our salespeople effectively. We just got rid of them because we sucked at sales. We sucked at it. But what we were good at was we were good at like implementation, data conversion. So they started with this offering. So after an initial meeting with, and it was usually somebody who was on QuickBooks, they would say, "Give us your data and give us 2 weeks. We will start to convert it over. Then we come back after we've brought some of it into Acumatica and we show you some stuff that we've done. And then after that, after you see what we've done with some of your data, you decide if you want to use us to go and we'll to do the full cut over in Acumatica." They gave them a price. It's going to be this amount per month, and then they just move forward with that. So it was totally a consulting play. So they said, and we're really good at it. Right. But we didn't have to do the entire conversion all at once. We just had to do some small segment of it. And that was usually uncovered as to something that was valuable to them in the initial conversation. So we concentrated on that and we showed them with their data how we would solve that problem. And then once they were like, "Oh yeah, let's do this," then they're like, "Okay, here it is. This is the per month price." And away we go. They've had over a 90% close rate on the organizations that they've done this. They've been doing this for a little bit over a year now. Now, quite frankly, I think the 90% close rate is too high, which means their price is too low. But that's just me because I'm just a pricer, right? but so, but that's okay. I'd rather have that problem than the we don't close enough business problem, right? So I think that's a really really interesting way to go. Ron, the last thing we're going to talk about, and this is so important to us because we're big. We're very persnickety about words. So talk to us a little bit on this transformational nature of language, and that really the place to start with all of this, guys, is changing some of the words that you use. That's it. That's all you have to begin with. Just start to change some of the words.
Yeah, a lot of change, at least at the beginning, is linguistic, right? If you want to change the conversation, change the language. I took inspiration from Walt Disney. He didn't have an amusement park. Disneyland was a theme park. He didn't have rides. He had attractions and adventures. He didn't have staff or carnies. He had um, cast members because Disneyland was a stage. You were on stage, off stage, backstage. He didn't have customers, he had guests. So we think, as we've seen the language in professional firms evolve based on their offering, like hourly billing, value pricing, and now what we believe we're entering the transformation economy, this is how we see the language changing. So just take the top one, training, you know, to education. Education is obviously more valuable than training. We train dogs and pets and horses. We educate humans. And now in the transformation economy, we're actually focused on the customer becoming healthier, wealthier, wiser. Um, we don't like the word client. We never have. We prefer customer. But now, if you're in a subscription business, you can have members or you can have aspirants, which is a term that Joe Pine prefers. And we also like audience because if you think about it, an audience gives their time freely to you. You don't have to pay for it with advertising and all of that. An audience comes to you and walks away and thinking that was time well spent listening to that podcast or watching that show, whatever it is. So, what are some other words, Ed, that you like that have changed over the decades?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because these are constantly changing. But I'm going to jump to the last one because I think it's also a change of mindset inside the organization too, as opposed to taking any client or by the hour or a dollar and chasing customers, which is what we've kind of been doing even in the value pricing perspective. But to the point now where we're getting to the point is no, we want the professional firm to think that they are choosing the right customers. They are choosing for fit. Right? We only want members of our community who fit within the community. And the reason why we can do that, of course, is because yes, we're going to command a higher price. And Ron, I think this is something you often say that if you have an ordinary common offering, you can only command an ordinary common price.
Yep.
But if
But
you
if you
have
have
an uncommon offering, you can command an uncommon price. But your offering has to be uncommon. It can't be common by definition. So that's one I think that's important, and of course the one that has always jumped out to me, Ron, is this notion of efficiency, effectiveness, and then efficaciousness. Just because I love polysyllabic words,
and also
right?
Ed too, just to tie it to the last
Yeah.
one again, choosing the right customers, that
Hmm.
also ties into our capacity because
Yes.
when we looked at capacity under the hourly billing model, we always figured it out in terms of hours. When we moved to value pricing, we were big advocates of adaptive capacity. Like an airline, you get to move the bulkheads, how many customers you want in first class and in business class and coach. But now in the transformation economy, we believe emotional capacity is really important because you're guiding transformations, and that's going to be hard, taxing work. You're going to need breaks from that. You're not going to be able to run anywhere near 100% capacity, which means you're probably going to have a waiting list.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that concept as having a waiting list versus having a queue, right? So, well, we hope that you guys. Thank you, by the way, Tracy, for your comment. Really appreciate you making that public for us. That you like take the opportunity to listen to us and on this topic. If you like what you heard, again, if you guys want to hear more from us or anything specific, and you think that this is good for the acu-connect conference, if you'd like to delve deeper on a particular aspect, or perhaps even just see something like this again, let us know. I am about to write up my proposal for speaking at acu-connect, so want to make sure that becomes part of it. We invite you to join our community for free, thresholdnow.com/join. If this is an interesting topic for you, you get some fun freebies there as well. And Ron has a book that's not part of the membership, but that's okay. You can buy that separate. We'll let you do that. So, and of course, listen to us on the Soul of Enterprise, which is the podcast that we do, and that's just the soulofenterprise.com. You can listen to the show for free. We have over 500 episodes, including one, as I mentioned, with Reed and Kurt Bangert, ERP, and then a couple of other partners as well. So I think you might find this stuff interesting. So Jennifer, back to you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
No, that was absolutely fascinating. You guys did a fantastic job as always. Very excited for you to come to acu-connect and present once again. I would like to just kind of reiterate, we do have a couple of more things coming up that we would love for you to guys join us for. We have the distribution, our virtual networking, the manufacturing, and then of course the highlight of our year, the acu-connect in September. And it was very good to see everybody join us, and we hope that you will come see us again soon. And absolutely, please, if you haven't already, join acu-connect as a customer, not an ISV or a VAR. I highly recommend it. It is very near and dear to my heart, and I learned so much from it. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.